Happy Devils Saturday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 246, titled The Calm Before Brylin. Boy, this feels different, being Saturday morning. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, Twitch, on the Let's Go Devils Network. Nick, it's early Saturday morning, and we're doing this podcast because last Wednesday didn't work out, but there's lots to talk about. There's Sergey Brylin night tonight. We've got Game Day Live tonight also at American Whiskey and Devils After Dark. We also got our big tailgate, joinourcrew.com, February 17th. Sign up for more details forthcoming, hopefully by the end of next week. But, Nick, there's a lot of things to talk about, but the big buzz overnight was the article you wrote on pucksandpitchforks.com.
Yeah, listen, it was a positive night, so I didn't want to get too negative. Big one over the Columbus Blue Jackets. Devils look really good. Vitek Vanacek looked decent. The one goal he gave up was bad, but he saved two other goals, which is kind of just like the cards you play with Vitek Vanacek, right? He'll make a save he's not supposed to, and then let in two or threes he wasn't supposed to. That's kind of the game you're playing with Vitek this year, and it's the cards have been dealt negatively more often than positively. But yeah, John Marino had a big goal, and you like to see that from him because he's been struggling this season. And Nathan Bastian scored. You like to see, I actually really like how he's been playing lately. And I know a lot of people they've soured on Bastian, but the past 6 games, he's a very good member of this roster, deserves the spot that he's in. And, you got a goal from Nico Hischier that looked real good. Timo Meier looked better, which is good because coming off of that injury, you were afraid he was going to have that 6 or 7 game stretch he had after the last injury. But I've been tinkering with this article that I wrote for pucksandpitchforks.com, and it's up right now. Why haven't the Devils made a trade yet? And I've been on here. I've written articles. I've been on social media. I've said the same thing. It's the prices. The prices are insane. You're never going to buy, it's the trade market for goalies right now is like the used car market of last year. Like the prices are astronomical and the interest rates aren't good enough to make me make a move.
Good analogy, by the way. Love the economics behind it. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. So, you're paying, when you were paying, 5 years ago, you were paying $25,000. This year, you're paying $40,000 for a car. While 5 years ago, you could have traded a third or second round pick for Jacob Markstrom. Now you're needing to trade a top prospect and a first round pick. It's that math isn't mathing for a lot of GMs, and that is part of the article. Part of the article was that the price of goalies is causing Tom Fitzgerald to kind of step back. Tom Fitzgerald has been in on every single goalie, every single one he has asked about. He's at least considered Merzlikins. I don't know if he's asked about Merzlikins, but I know he's asked about Markstrom. He's asked about Gibson. He's asked about even Fleury. There's rumors out there that he's asked about Fleury, but nothing has come to fruition. And I think that's price. But I think those conversations happened a while ago, Sam. And I think those conversations probably started in the offseason, right? Because he was definitely in on Hellebuck. But, I've been on this podcast that I don't think he was ever available. I think Hellebuck was never available. At least last offseason. If Hellebuck didn't sign, he would have been available. But I think it was all just conversation. Blow me away if you want to. But if you don't blow me away, he's not moving. I think that's the similar situation with Markstrom. I think the Calgary Flames aren't even going to go to Markstrom with a trade request unless they get blown away by a trade. And that they could change that demand as we get closer to the trade deadline, but they have no reason to do it right now. They're still in a playoff race, just like the Devils are. So that's price. I want to jump to the third reason. You could go and read the article if you want the second reason on pucksandpitchforks.com. Let's jump to the third reason, Sam. Is it possible that Tom Fitzgerald in this front office has seen how this team has played and just deciphered that it's not good enough to make that run? Like, they don't... We heard, what was it, 2 years ago, where Tom Fitzgerald talked about what this team deserves, and that's why he made the Andrew Hammond trade. He thought they were playing well, thought they were playing hard, and he felt terrible that a goalie was what ruined the season. What if he feels differently this year? Because think about the differences between the 21-22 team and why they lost, and this year's team and why they're losing. This year's team is losing because of... The goalie is still a major problem. But the 21-22 team didn't have any good goalies, right? Blackwood got hurt. Bernier got hurt.
To tell you the truth,
Wedgwood got claimed off waivers.
I'll further more. They didn't have any goalies.
Yeah. John Gillies was starting. Nico Dawes ran out of gas, just straight up. Akira Schmid was really bad that season. We don't really talk about that, but he was the worst goalie of them all. And then you traded for Hammond, who is terrible. But he talked about what they deserve. What if he doesn't feel that way about this team? What if he feels like this team doesn't deserve a move because they're just not good enough? What if he's looking at this and says, there's an opportunity cost to what we did last year, breaking franchise records, playing over our heads in the playoffs, beating our rivals, the New York Rangers, in 7 games, and then going up against Carolina. There's an opportunity cost, and that cost is losing David Severson, Ryan Graves, Miles Wood, Tomas Tatar, because those guys get too expensive. So you have to trade for a guy like Toffoli to kind of fill that hole. And then they traded for Colin Miller too. So I think that the Devils made that opportunity cost. We're hopeful that a guy like Luke Hughes would come in, play over his head. A guy like Simon Nemetz would come in. I thought they thought Nemetz would be coming in around now. I think he came in early, but he's been playing over his head. He's playing very well. Hoping Kevin Ball can really step up. What you didn't expect when you're the Devils is for John Marino and Jonas Siegenthaler before his injury to go in the tank and just play like some of the worst defensemen we've seen in years. So my point is, to kind of get back to the point, is that when he looks at this team, it's mental mistakes. It's constantly I don't even want to call it mistakes because, Sam, I don't know if they're mistakes because they keep repeating them. So I don't know if it's the players are not playing the system the way Lindy Ruff wants it to, or Ryan McGill and Travis Green want them to, or if the system doesn't work. Because this is a different system than last year. Like the defensive system, it was an opportunistic system last year, and it gave up a lot of 2-on-1s because of it, and it gave up a lot of breakaways and odd man chances. But this year, it's causing what I'm going to eloquently call extreme danger chances. There's a stat that already exists that's high danger chances, but it just basically looks at where the player is taking the shot from and the circumstances. Like, is it a rush chance? Is it a 2-on-1? Is it a pass one-timer? Those things. Here, I see the Devils 20 times a game, Sam. 20 times a game pass across the crease in the defensive zone. At least half of those times, Sam, it is when the Devils' defenseman is holding onto the puck until the very last moment when an attacking player can come and pressure them. They are not making the outlet pass quickly. It looks like they're trying to wait for a play to develop, and that seems systemic. And it's not working. And it's January and we haven't fixed it. There's other things that obviously aren't working, but that's like the main thing, is the turnovers that it's causing in the defensive zone. Vis-a-vis, it's possible that Tom Fitzgerald is looking at this situation and saying, we don't have the right pieces in place, whether that's the players, whether that's the coaching staff, whatever, to make a run to the Stanley Cup. So why would I make the move of trading and this is what it's going to cost right now, folks. Alex Holtz, Dawson Mercer, Simone Nemitz, our first-round pick, next year's first-round pick. These are the pieces that have to move to get a goalie. Not all of them, obviously, but people are probably putting their foot in the sand and asking for Mercer, especially Calgary, because Calgary wants NHL players. It's always what they've wanted in these deals. They want to stay competitive, so they're asking for Mercer. I could tell you that's what they want. They want Mercer, and if it's not Mercer, they'll wait. Why would the Devils trade Mercer right now for a goalie, even a goalie with term like Markstrom? Why would they do that right now when you don't know where it's going to get you this year? You're paying an opportunity cost. You're paying a cost to do business for this year because you want to make the run this year. And if you don't want to make the run, the prices are going to drop in the offseason. They're like Gibson is probably not getting traded. I really just don't think he's going to get traded unless the market absolutely changes. But his price is going to drop significantly in the offseason. Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be a free agent in the offseason. He's going to sign with whoever he wants. I'm trying to think. Merz Lincolns is not a goal you even want. And I think you kind of learned that last night. But, if he's going to get traded, but he might get bought out if it doesn't work out. And there's going to be other goalies that are going to become available in the offseason. My point being is that and then Saros, there's some rumblings about Nashville and Yusei Saros. He'll probably be cheaper in the offseason than he's going to be right now because Nashville just started even considering it, apparently. So I don't think they're going to take the first offers that come their way. I think they'd rather just wait until the offseason and possibly try to make the playoffs this year in Brunette's first year and see what happens. They're in a wait-and-see mode. I got to give Barry Trotz credit. He did a really good job putting that roster together, even though we were ragging on it at first. So anyway, I've been babbling on. My point is that maybe the front office doesn't believe in this team to the point of going all out. Do they think they can make the playoffs? Yeah, obviously. They're right there. They're winning, and they're still winning some of these games. They're just losing really dumb games. Like that game against Montreal, to lose that game was unacceptable on Wednesday. So, Sam, I've been talking for about 10 minutes straight. So I need to get your thoughts. What's going through your head as I'm going through all these scenarios?
I agree with most of what you're saying. I'm so proud of you, Nick, because I've been saying this the last 3 months. Everything you said, I've been saying this the last 3 months. I may kid around and saying, I've disguised it as, just wait till 2025. But, right now, to go put all your chips in, with what we have right now, I think it's too premature to go all in for a goalie. And the price of these goaltenders right now, it's not a good buy. It's not a good buy. And I love your analogy about last year's used car market with the combined with the interest rates. There's no reason to get a used car if your car right now is still working. Yeah, a work in progress, so to speak. So, I think your assessment is good because, I've said that on this podcast many, many times to you and to the audience that standing pat may be the best thing because with all these prospects like Seamus Casey and even younger players like Dawson Mercer, teams are going to ask go for the moon, and you're better off right now waiting it out either to find a goaltender of the future through a trade or free agent, or you develop one. I love to keep the assets and not have to give up anything for a goaltender. Now, the goaltenders that we've been talking about most recently are more of the goaltenders in the short term. But long term, unless you can guarantee, I mean, and it's hard to predict goaltenders, by the way, because they get injured, they get in a funk. It's a different game than it was when Martin Brodeur played. So, again, that's why, I've been always preaching that let's fix the defense first. Let's play the team concept. I think last year, and this is good on Tom Fitzgerald, he has not overvaluated his team. He's been very careful because coming off of a record-breaking season, he did not make the same mistake that Ray Shero did after the Taylor Hall MVP season. So I think Tom Fitzgerald's very smart. Everything is well thought out, calculated. So right now, for the time being, as he's stalling, he's finding out what kind of goalie assets he has. That's why Nico Dawes is up. That's why Schmidt is down in the minors. That's why Vitek Vanacek is still playing. Although, you know my opinion on it. I think he's going to turn it around. But for sake of, this conversation, they're playing Vanacek to see where he's really at and then further evaluate. Do they really need to make a move now, or should they just stand pat? We're gonna go to the playoffs, hopefully, and maybe we could go through a couple rounds, and then we'll evaluate after the end of the season when the goalie market maybe, as what you said, a lot better. Like, remember the days of buying a new car, 0 down, 0% interest for 5 years?
That was great.
Oh yeah.
Remember when you could get like a 3-year, whatever, the length of your loan was 3 years.
Yeah.
It was still only like $150 a month.
Yeah. Like that's why
now it's like $700 a month for a 7-year loan.
That's why I'm praying that my Jeep can last me, because I don't know. Thankfully, my Jeep is still going. It's got a lot of miles on it. It's got over 300,000, believe it or not. And
I tell you, I've always been against leasing, but I bought my car, and now it's worth about $2,500. And I was like, is it worth the extra $150 a month just to own the car when by the time you trade it in, it's worth a tenth of what you paid for it? And I'll make a hockey reference out of this. I wish there was a warranty with a lot of these trades because there's just no guarantees in any of this, and that's what makes it scary. That's why, we're going back and forth with it. But I'm glad that you kind of see the light where I've been at for the last 3 months. It's a very, it's. Do we need a goaltender? Obviously we do, but at what price? I'm telling you, that pipeline that the Devils have right now, that pipeline that we've been talking about, that Devils fans have suffered and earned because of the 10 years to build that pipeline, don't give it away for free for a 2-year goaltender. Absolutely not. And here's the thing: is that the pipeline is much weaker than it was.
Yes.
This is what happens when you graduate a lot of your prospects and then don't have first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
You really blew it on Chase Stillman. I'm ready to call him just a bad pick, at least. I won't call him a bust. He's way too young to call him that. But I think it was a bad pick at the time that's coming to fruition on a bad pick. And next month I'm going to do my top 25 prospects. I don't even know where I'm going to put him because I just don't know. I think he could be an NHL player, maybe.
Well, the jury's still out. It doesn't look good at this point. It could change in a heartbeat, just like Muhammad Doolan, who knew if he was even coming to North America at the time. And then he's part of the Timo Meier trade. And do you think it's and I'm not trolling here, but do you think it's still the jury's out on what the Devils gave up for Timo Meier, considering you're talking about draft picks? Do you think it was too much at this point?
No. People need to stop with the Timo Meier nonsense. He's been injured. Like, it happens. Like, players get injured sometimes. Like, get over it. And it takes some time to get back into the swing of things. Like, these people, like, saying, like, Timo Meier's a failure it's idiotic. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't mean to insult people, but to say he's a failure 1 year into this contract, when he's, again, we don't beat the Rangers without Timo Meier.
Yeah.
Like, I need y'all to understand that. We got Timo Meier because he brings more than just scoring. But he is a scorer. Like, everybody's like, go get Ryan Reeves. Go get this guy. No, you want a guy who's more like Tom Wilson. Not with the dirty hits, but with the ability to drive offense and play that hard-nosed grind style. And that's why you got Timo Meier. Timo Meier can knock a guy's head off, safely, and he can also score goals. And he's also fast enough to keep up with the Jack Hugheses and the Nico Hischiers. So
I'm still reevaluating. I'm still reevaluating my argument because last year I put out that tweet that the Devils don't need, quote unquote, need Timo Meier, and I'm kind of reevaluating because I valued the pipeline and those draft picks that they gave up more than Timo Meier in the long term. Short term, I'm probably wrong on it overall because he did re-sign. Because that was the other thing that I was concerned about is what it was going to cost. And I got to give Tom Fitzgerald credit because at the time, we're talking 10, 12 million. And I'm thinking, you're giving up 2 first-rounders and a couple prospects, including Muhammad Doolin, and you got to pay this guy 10, 12 million. But the price that they got, I can deal with the injuries and the slow start so far. Actually, it's not even that slow. But I mean, I agree that the trade was good once it happened, but at the time before the trade, I mean, a lot of Devils fans want to throw Alexander Holtz and a lot of other prospects in that mix, and it's like, no.
That would look bad right now because Holtz is playing well.
Oh, yeah, and remember that a lot of people wanted – who was the other player? But anyway –
I mean, the Sharks fans were talking about Mercer. And they were saying, well, if you want Meier, you got to give up Mercer. That was never happening.
No.
Like, Mercer is the reason a lot of these deals take so long. Because he's the shiny object that everybody wants. And it's like, I'm going to make another crazy analogy, but it's like when the hottest person in school hasn't picked a prom date. Everybody's going to wait for that person to pick,
and then the dominoes fall.
and then everybody's going to go with their backup plan, their third string plan, their fourth string plan. That's what happens when teams come to Tom Fitzgerald and say Mercer. And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, we'll call you back when it's Mercer. And it's never Mercer, right? So they keep asking. Then you get close to the deadline, and then they're like, all right, well, we're about to get nothing for this asset, and the price is going to go down in the offseason. So then they start accepting lesser. I just think that this team, there's 2 things has tanked this team's season. You could deal with all of the on ice mistakes in a vacuum, right? The way they're playing in a vacuum is good enough to win. The issue is that the schedule makers were very, very not nice to this team.
No, not at all.
Having the most back-to-backs, with I think only 4 of them are two home game back-to-backs, to have 16 back-to-backs with this team that's still trying to figure some things out. What are they? Are they still 1-7-1 in back-to-backs?
Something like that. They're probably going to lose tonight.
The one thing I'll say is they do tend to step up in these specialty nights, like these honor nights. Because we went to what was it, the 2000? They were honoring the 2000 Stanley Cup team, the 2003 Stanley Cup team. One of those. We did a big podcast for that, and they played their hearts out. I think it was against Philly.
Is that with our $500,000 party?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was our $500,000 party. Which, by the way, since then we've cleared about 320,000 downloads, so we're over 800,000.
That's wild.
Thanks to you, to fans like Max with the super chat, saying that some of the goalies are very certified lemons.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a lemon law for Vitek Vanacek. I will
Yeah,
tell you that.
or any goaltender for that matter. I mean, I'm surprised. The Sharks didn't ask for extended warranty on that Mackenzie Blackwood trade that the
Yeah,
Devils did.
he hasn't been good. He might be out of the league next year.
Yeah, but it is a bad team though.
It is, and I don't remember what his contract is. So maybe he. I think he's signed. He might have signed for multiple years. Let's talk about Dawes. You know where I'm at on Dawes. I'm doing the victory lap it's early to do the victory lap, and I'm still worried about the hip. But I said in the offseason, when everybody was saying Hellebuck was still available, Gibson was out there, and Chico said who's going to be the goaltender when the Devils go into the playoffs, and I said Nico Dawes. Because here's where I came up with this, and I think I explained this on that podcast, but I don't think I've done a good enough job explaining it since he's been brought up. Nico Dawes was always the gem to the Devils as far as goaltending prospects. This team thinks that the starting AHL goaltender is higher on their list of priorities than the backup NHL goaltender. It's just, as far as development goes, as far as, what we think of this player. Last season, when they called up Akira Schmid, the numbers say they should have called up Nico Dawes. They called up Schmid because they wanted Nico Dawes to get more game time. What happened was Akira Schmid just went on a heater, which goalies tend to do. And when it came time for the playoffs, you had to go for Schmid because he showed he could do it in the NHL level. But that never hurt Nico Dawes' value to the organization. They still prioritized Dawes when it came to a goalie. Sam, how many times did we hear that the Devils wanted to send Akira Schmid down to Utica, even after how well he played in the playoffs last year? They prioritized getting him starters minutes. Let me see if this is the starter of the future. Let me put him in this league and see if that's the case, because we think we got something really good in Dawes, but he's coming off a hip injury. I don't know what he's going to look like. He came back from the hip injury, looks stupendous.
He says
Now
he feels good.
Devils.
He says he feels great.
Says he's never felt this good.
Yeah.
He's making movements he's never been able to make. The lateral movements are there. So maybe there's advancements in these hip surgeries. Maybe he didn't get the same one that like Corey Schneider kind of ruined his career. Who knows? Here's what I do know. I think that Dawes is the future guy. He was so good in juniors. He had kind of a rough World Juniors, but I think we overvalue the World Juniors a little bit. It's just a tournament, just like the Olympics. Like we overvalue the Olympics when we see guys in there. That's why Yurov Slavkovsky, what number one overall is because of how well he played in the Olympics. I think Dawes is the guy. I think you can make a deal for Markstrom and Dawes still be the guy, because the Devils are lucky. Here's why the Devils are lucky, Sam. Dawes and Schmidt's contract is up this year. So, Dawes can make an argument if he has a really good season, he drives the Devils to the playoffs, that he deserves a better contract. But if he started that last year, or say his contract wasn't up for 2 years, he could be asking for Markstrom money. If he's doing this, if he's doing 9-15, 9-20 for 2 years in a row behind this defense with, a league-leading high-danger save percentage. But if he does it this year, what do you give Nico Dawes? It's probably a bridge deal, right? But you're only going to have to pay him like $2 million. at most, right? And Schmidt is the same thing. Schmidt's probably going to get like $1 million, $1.5 million, if that, right? He's just going to be happy to get an NHL salary in the AHL, which the Schmidt thing gets complicated because he has to go through waivers next year.
Yeah.
So that part is where you really have to look at yourself and say, what do we want to do here? Because if you make the Markstrom trade, I assume you're going through with a tandem of Markstrom and Dawes. Like, that's where you see yourself next year. And that kind of leaves Schmidt out. Maybe it's a fight between Schmidt and Dawes. But if you put yourself in that position, right, you're going to have that competition in training camp in the preseason. You then put yourself in the position where you have to make a decision. And I'll tell you what, Sam, I don't care when he goes on waivers, Schmidt's getting claimed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not making it through waivers. Spencer Martin just got claimed through waivers, and he's just not a good goalie. He's the third goalie in Columbus. Schmidt's getting claimed through waivers. He's young. He showed he can do it in the playoffs. Somebody would take him. So what you'd probably have to do is if you get a Markstrom, and I keep saying Markstrom because that's the only one I really want. Don't really want Gibson. I'm sure he'd be fine, but I'm just not there. I don't really want Fleury. I'd love Saros, but I don't really think he's available. So that's why I keep saying Markstrom. So let's say you get Markstrom. You got him for, I think there's 2 more years left after this one. You could sign Dawes and Schmidt to 2 bridge deals. And that would take all 3 contracts ending at the same time. It's probably not the best, but for the situation that you've been in, it makes sense. And then you could reevaluate the position in 2 years when every single person on your team is in their prime, right? That, like, Jack Hughes is, I think, 25. Nico Heischer's 27. Jesper Bratt's 25 or 26. Like, that's when you really want to shoot for it and say, this is our time to win the cup.
2025, 25, 26. See, I said that 3 years ago. Nobody listens to me, Nick.
But Sam, I need to also warn you. You could be the Edmonton Oilers or the Vancouver Canucks where you miss your opportunity. There's countless. I mean, the Vancouver Canucks are a bad example this year, but
that's why that pipeline is so important at this juncture.
True,
because you can always reload with the pipeline. Getting back to out of all the goalies that I think is appropriate at the right price, I don't think he would come to New Jersey. I'm on Fleury for the very reason that he's an older goaltender, proven goaltender. I think he would be best for the short term. I'm not thinking long term, and at the right price, I wouldn't mind Fleury, but I don't think does he have like no movement in his contract, or
I would assume he has something, right?
Because I thought I heard somewhere, and I don't know where I heard this from, but I heard it a few years ago from somebody that knows their stuff and said Fleury, his preference, so he would never come play for a team in the same division as the Penguins. I don't know why that is, but for whatever reason, I thought I heard that. Is it still valid today? Because it was a few years ago. I don't know. But
yeah, a lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, in terms of goaltending, you should get credit because you were in on Dawes. I was in on Schmid for his poise, and again, I think Schmid should spend more time in the AHL for because he got robbed of his time in his AHL because they needed him so badly, up in the NHL. And while Dawes developed, Dawes had the chance to get that surgery, recuperate, recover, and I honestly think right now, before they I'll say it again, that before the Devils go after, if they ever go after an elite goaltender, whatnot, go with what worked with St. Louis and with the Vegas Golden Knights. Hopefully, you can get a goaltender in their mid-20s that figures it out when the playoffs come, and they come on the cheap. And I think that's with this team, with a Lindy Ruff system, all that. I mean, the era of Martin Brodeur, that type of goaltender is non-existent. It's dead. It's not saying that there will never be a goaltender like that that can play 77 games and every year for 20 years practically. Today's game is too. What's that?
I don't think they would let anybody do that.
No, yeah, it's kind of like baseball. It's like goalies are on a pitch count right now. So
I was gonna say Garrett Cole's going out and pitching 6 innings.
It's a different game now, and again, last night, I thought Vanacek again. Scotty alluded to on After Dark that there was still a lot of rebounds that he was giving up, and that's a liability.
He was still frantic. That's just how he plays. He's a frantic goalie.
Some goalies, again, but it's a matter of is he the right goalie for the New Jersey Devils? And I can't stand that franticness because we're so used to Brodeur's, calm, and even Corey Schneider, I thought he gave up a lot of rebounds, but he was always calm about it for the second, third, and fourth shot. He wasn't like, all over the place like Vanacek where he's flopping like a fish, in the crease.
He looks like a teacups ride sometimes. He's just like spinning out there in both directions. Like, it's
very Hasek-like. It really
is very Hasek-like, but in the worst possible way.
Yeah. Like Hasek was control chaos, if that even makes sense. Like it was I mean, I've watched hockey for so long, and Dominik Hasek is the one that you can't put any logic on. It was just weird because it seemed he lost control, but he was always in control of his chaos. Where Vanacek, the perception is he's chaotic in his head when he plays, and then his body reacts to it that way. So,
yeah, I don't know how or if there's fixing Vitek Vanacek. I do think that his confidence got shot in the playoffs last year. And I think, and I know, you're going to hate me for saying this, but I think probably the worst thing that Lindy has done, worse than the Holtz benchings, worse than, whatever. I think the worst thing that Lindy has done in his coaching tenure in the Devils is put Vanacek back in that Carolina series. I think it was the wrong move. I think it really it made the Devils themselves feel a little bit desperate, and it worked for a game, right? They scored 8 goals the next game, but Vanacek looked bad in that game. He gave them 4 goals, like they were bad goals. So I think that taking Schmidt out when the first 2 games weren't really Schmidt's fault, like the Devils were just getting bombarded, and it just didn't make sense to me. And I think you could have recovered with Vanacek if you didn't put him out the second time and let him get bombarded again and lose the series. I think you could have chalked it up to the hot goalie. I think you could chalked it up to a lot of things if you just kept Vanacek on the bench. And you didn't. And I think his head is just not where it needs to be. And I don't know if the Devils have the right pieces to fix it. Because there's been a lot of, I'm gonna loop this into another argument that I hate that's going on right now. But think about the Igor Sharangovich situation. Sharangovich is having a phenomenal season with Calgary. They're probably one of their best players on offense. And he has 19 goals. Everybody's like, oh, Devils lost the Toffoli trade.
Say nonsense.
Toffoli's leading this team in goals.
I say nonsense.
He's more goals than anybody. And there was a couple players that you're like, this guy is clearly going to dominate on a different situation. Pavel Zacha is number one on that list. When he got traded to Boston, everybody was like, oh, he's going to eat in Boston. Yeah, it's the perfect situation for him. But he wasn't going to do that here. Yeah. Same thing for Sharangovich. Sharangovich wasn't going to do this here. He had the opportunity last season. He was on Jack Hughes' wing early last season and didn't play up to that status. I thought Lindy Ruff should have kind of let him play it out because I do think he has this kind of skill in him, but he definitely didn't earn it. And I think this season he would have been in a bottom six role, which is not where he should be. He should be exactly what he's doing right now. He should play in the penalty kill to build his confidence. He should be able to make these insane moves. And to be truthful, Igor Sharangovich has been on these heaters before in New Jersey, and then he falls off and doesn't score for 20, 30 games. So, and to be fair, Toffoli is the same exact player. He was on a heater to start the season, and now he's been not good for at least 10 games. I had to look at the actual numbers. But that's Toffoli. That's what he is. And he could have scored 2, maybe 3 goals last night. Didn't score any. He did have a bad penalty. So, granted, like they kind of cancel out, but he should have scored at least the one on the breakaway. He's just not. I'm sure he's probably holding the stick a little tightly, and But I don't think you got a bad player in Tyler Toffoli. I think you still got the better player, and I'll die on that hill. I think Tyler Toffoli is a better player than Igor Sharangovich, and to get that opportunity cost with only a third-round pick, I still think it's a win for Tom Fitzgerald, no matter what Sharangovich does this year. Unless Sharangovich scores like 40. And then I'll be like, all right, I'll put my foot in my mouth. He found consistency in Calgary. But for right now, I think he's just on a heater. Toffoli will get there. The power play has been kind of in the tank for a little while. When Jack Hughes returns to that power play is playing well again, Toffoli will start scoring again. And we'll all be happy. And we need him to score down the stretch. And before we go, Sam, I do want to kind of just turn this around into a positive. It's possible this front office doesn't think this team is good enough. But it's also very possible that this team could be in second place in the Metro in a month. 2 reasons. A, this division's incredibly close. I still don't understand how Philly is winning. So,
you want me to tell you?
What?
It's a team concept. If you watch their games, okay, forget about analytics, forget about on paper, the players. Each player is playing their role and just focusing. They've kept it simple. They're not.
I've been told they also changed their system. The Tort system was not going to work anymore. So good on him for realizing that and making the adjustments to win in today's game.
They're very efficient. Let's just put it that way. They're very efficient, and and that's what I'm hoping that Lindy Ruff can do with this team. Is just, you talk about the outlet passes again. You're right. Last year, the first outlet pass went out less than a quarter of a second. But it didn't have to go far.
And you were out of your zone.
Yeah.
This team can't get out of its zone, even when nobody's around them. They just wait for somebody to attack them. It's so frustrating.
It's almost like they're waiting for the perfect play, and sometimes you're going to get burnt. It's all about. I mean, it's all about the timing. It's just. It's. Do you want to just? You got to have that quick release. I'll make a football reference. Like Dan Marino had a quick release. when he threw that ball. The faster you get it out, the better you're going to be. So again, you don't want to telegraph your passes. That's why you got to get it up quickly. And that's
and I'll say this: this is my big worry is that I think the players are rejecting it because we've seen it with. And okay, I don't want to be like the Flyers guy that like talked about Kevin Hayes that got yelled at by Torts. I don't want it to I don't want to make it sound like I'm throwing anybody under the bus, but when I see Luke Hughes run through an entire team, that's not what the coaching staff wants him to do, but it's worked a couple times. And I think that's some parts of frustration with what's been going on in the defensive zone. And players aren't moving their feet as much as they should to get open and to put themselves in, this is why you see a lot of like ping pong with the defensemen because none of the forwards are open. So they pass back and forth until a lane opens and then shoots. And then none of them are Dougie Hamilton, so it's hard to score that way. But sometimes it works. It worked with Marino, and that got the game going. And
you know what? Let's put it this way. To have the talent to go to do what Luke Hughes, what he does is fantastic. However, the comparisons between him and Niedermayer, let's talk about Scott Niedermayer, and I'm hoping that Luke Hughes will be this type of player. Scott Niedermayer has pretty much the same abilities, or let's the other way around. Luke Hughes has the same abilities, maybe even more, than Scott Niedermayer with his skating, his puck handling, skill level, hockey IQ. But the thing about Scott Niedermayer that made him Scott Niedermayer is as soon as Jacques Lemaire got there, Scott Niedermayer knew when to turn it on when the team needed it. And that goal against the Red Wings, that coast-to-coast, I mean, that's smart hockey. Like, Keith Primo, if you remember Flyers Pittsburgh years ago in the playoffs, 5 overtimes. Was it 5? I think it was 5 overtimes. Keith Primo, the Flyers centerman, went with one move to the net against Darius Kasparaitis. He went with the same move from the first period to 5 overtimes in. But then he knew when to change it up, where it was a risky move, but he knew when to change it up in overtime, and that's how they scored the goal to end the game. And that's discipline right there. That's discipline because, Keith Primo knew that if he was going to pull off that move, he could lose the puck, and the puck's going the other way. But he knew when to do it and when to take risks. And that will come with time with Luke Hughes. Right now he's a rookie, but year 5, you're going to see a much smarter and even more, talented Luke Hughes in the future. And same with Simon Nemec. I mean, so he's won me over. I'm still
Nemec looks great.
I'm second
penalty kill. That's insane.
I'm second guessing myself with that Logan Cooley thing. Again, you called the Nemec before that draft, but you weren't sure because would he fall? Would the Devils trade back? If you remember, we were talking about that. But,
yeah, and I remember I talked about Shane Wright a lot too.
Yeah.
What I said, just to kind of take a little bit of credit away from me, is that I thought the Devils should take Shane Wright, but I think they're going to take a defenseman. And I saw a lot of rumblings about Nemec. It was kind of between Jurishik and Nemec, the Columbus guy. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like the Devils were leaning towards Nemec. I think that's what I said.
Yeah. And it turned out to be true. And, and I'm still not high on Slavkovsky at all. I know everybody wanted him initially, and I wanted Cooley over him. But and Cooley's not a bad player either. But, and the reason
Cooley's going to take a little while. Cooley's one of those players that's going to take – everybody had him in the Calder race, and he's going to take a minute or two, especially in Arizona.
Yeah.
He's still great. Well, very talented player.
But I honestly thought that, reason why you took Cooley, I reference him as the mini Jack Hughes is at that point, like Hughes gets hurt a lot, and you really don't have depth down the middle when you've already have a significant injury, a lot of injuries each year between Heischer and Hughes, and I thought it would be best to have Cooley and keep Dawson Mercer on the wing.
I think I think you kind of hit it. I think the reason they don't agree with you is because they have Mercer.
Yeah.
I think they value him as a center.
Yep.
Even though he plays in the wing. And then who saw this McLeod jump in production coming? But he's really helped.
Beer Baron did back in 2017 when we started the podcast.
Oh, well, I mean, it took a very long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, people forget this. We forget, and this is where we're going to end. And there's other things involved that we talk about. We talked about the Hockey Canada thing. We don't need to talk about it again until it comes up. We actually know what's happening. But the Devils made McLeod a free agent this season.
Yeah.
Like not a restricted free agent. They said, go find another team if you think you can if you want to if you think you can do arbitration or whatever. Go find another team.
They didn't do that with Bastian.
They did do that with Bastian. They did with both of them.
Yeah, but they gave him a 2-year deal, right?
They gave Bastian a 2-year contract. They gave McLeod a 1. It's very telling what they did.
Yep.
And I don't know. Did you hear what Jeremy Swayman said, the goalie in Boston? What he said about arbitration?
Yeah.
So there's a reason why teams are avoiding this. There has to be a better way, by the way, than having to badmouth your player to a neutral party and ruin a relationship. Like, the arbitration is antiquated and probably needs to go away. But I'll end on this, that the Devils have no young depth. Like, there's no centers in the prospect pool. There's none. There's none in the NHL that you really want in the NHL. You got like the Shane Bauer types and the Chris Tierney's, and like that's what you're dealing with as far as depth at center. So I get what you're saying about Cooley having a young depth center, and it was kind of my same argument with Shane Wright. Right? It was just that I liked Wright because I thought he was like the best possible version of Eric Halla you can get, and you can pair it with Hughes, and he could score 30, 40 goals. But I seem to be wrong on that, right? I don't know what's going on with Wright. He just doesn't seem to be a very good player. Neither does Slavkovsky. Nemitz, Jurishik, and Cooley seem to be the top guys in that draft class so far.
Yeah. Yeah, and all fantastic hockey players, by the way. I mean, even though I'm not a big fan of Slavkovsky, and Shane Wright or whatnot, they're still, it's not like they're not going to play in the NHL. It's just we're looking for elite. And the pairing of Luke Hughes and Nemitz, I remember a couple of years ago you were talking about that, was like, it's like, holy crap, your top pairing is set for a generation if you do that Nemitz thing, potentially.
Yeah, I don't think... So Nemitz has played a lot more of a defensive style than I expected. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And that was 100% on Devils development. I got to give them all the credit in the world because they brought him to the AHL and immediately said, go play the penalty kill. You're going to change your style slightly because we don't need another... Like, we have Luke Hughes. He's more dynamic offensively than you. So we don't need you to be dynamic offensively. Play a defensive style. Because I did write about it I think it was right after they drafted him that I didn't want ever a Luke Hughes, Simon Nemitz, Shimon Nemitz pairing. But now, with how Nemitz has been playing, I do think that you can do that. I do think that can happen because Nemitz is playing a different style, and then you can... The only issue is that Nemitz pinches a lot. A lot. And that's theoretically what you would want Luke Hughes to do, right? You want Luke Hughes to be the guy who goes in deep because of how good he is at puck handling and getting the puck on his stick off a pass. That would be that would be the one thing that you have to work on. I still think in the long run you're going to have a defensive defenseman, like a Jonas Siegenthaler from last year type. So hopefully Siegenthaler can do it next year. A John Marino from last year type because he's right-handed to be paired with Luke Hughes. And then you'd want somebody probably like Ball. I think they like the Ball Nemitz pairing long term. If Ball can step up his game like 30%, I think they'll really like that going forward. Sam, that's all I got.
Wow. Well, it's been a wonderful Saturday morning. We've got a lot of
Good morning, folks.
Live listeners. Dropping the podcast in about 20 minutes. It's part of a triple header Saturday. I'll be down at American Whiskey for Game Day Live. Then hopefully I'll be going in with Matt. I got to talk to him. One of our listeners. He said he wants to talk to me about Lindy Ruff and wants me to expand my thoughts on him. But yeah. And then Devils After Dark after the game as part of our triple header Saturday. Also, remember the tailgate. Yeah, the tailgate at MetLife Stadium for the outdoor game. We're bringing the big stage in the parking lot. And we're going to have lots of hoopla and fun. We just, information's forthcoming. As we get it, we will send you an email blast, but the only way to get it is joinourcrew.com. Again, joinourcrew.com. You see our QR code on the screen. You can scan that, or you could go to joinourcrew.com, sign up, and as soon as we know, we'll give you the updates via email or text message. And just remember, text messaging is good because at MetLife Stadium, if you went to the Taylor Swift concert, the cell phones weren't really working that well. So text messaging was a great way to communicate, but we will have more information for you as we're planning and some prizes, giveaways, and all that. We're still working that out, Nick. I'm thinking about making a towel, Nick.
A towel?
Yeah, to wave in the background before Game Day
like
Live.
A terrible towel?
Yeah, but I was going to put something that I can't say it on air. It'll be a woo towel.
Can you not say it because it's classified or not say it because it's dirty?
I don't want to Grant Marshall myself on air.
Okay.
I'll tell you afterwards. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
But pucksandpitchforks.com. Go check it out. That article on the 3 reasons they haven't made a trade is out. We have a piece on Holtz. We have a piece on there's lots of stuff. Just go check out pucksandpitchforks.com. Oh, I have 3 reasons, 3 ways the Devils can save this season. That's all set on pucksandpitchforks.com. Go check it out.
All right. See you then. See you at American Whiskey. Till next time. Let's go Devils.